Welcome everyone to Torah Today Ministries and our continuing series, Parsha Seasonings, where we look at some of the details of each Torah portion, details that reveal themselves only in the Hebrew and often only in the Torah scroll itself. And this week we find ourselves in Torah portion Vayeira, which means "and he appeared." And it is found in Genesis chapters 18 through 22. Now, one of those details that appear only in the Torah scroll is here in verse 9, chapter 18, verse 9. We have the three angels who have come and appeared to Abraham at his tent. There are three angels because there are three missions, and one of those missions is to announce the birth of their son Isaac 1 year later. And it says here, "And they said to him, 'Where is Sarah your wife?' And he said, 'She is in the tent.'" Now, that phrase "to him" is one word in Hebrew, and it's Eloi, four letters, Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Nun. Vav. And the first, third, and fourth letters of this word have dots over them in the Torah scroll. Now, I know in the printed Hebrew Bible, you find dots and dashes, which are vowel markings, vowel symbols. But there are no vowel symbols in a Torah scroll. Nevertheless, this word in this verse, in every Torah scroll in the world, has three dots over these letters. And these are not vowels. So the big question is, what do these three dots represent? Does it represent the three messengers, the three angels who have come to speak Eloi to him? Well, the rabbis believe that what these three dots represent is that these three letters, the Aleph, the Yud, and the Vav, are to be taken as a single word. So if we take those three letters, it spells the word Ayo, which is a question in Hebrew. It means, "Where is he?" So they said to him, Eloi, and three of those letters have dots over them. Those three letters spell the word Ayo, which means, "Where is he?" Now, what is this supposed to mean? So they've asked Abraham, "Where is she? Where is Sarah, your wife?" He says, "In the tent." But hidden in that word, Eloi, is the word Ayo. Where is he? It's almost as if while Sarah is listening to this conversation from behind the tent flap, they want her to ask the question, "Where is he?" referring to where is Abraham. We know that there were times when Abraham's faith was greater than Sarah's. When Abraham was told he was going to have a son, he fell on the ground just laughing uproariously, and there was no rebuke. But when Sarah is told she's going to have a son, she laughs and she's rebuked for it. So why is she rebuked and Abraham is not? And the sages say that Sarah was rebuked not because she laughed, but because she did not laugh enough. Her faith was not quite as strong as Abraham's. And after all, Abram had had fathered a son already, this Ishmael. But Sarah had not had not born any children, not fathered them for sure, but not born any children at all. There is I'm sure, a bitterness, at least temptation to bitterness in her spirit. Because in ancient times, a woman's worth in her own eyes was her ability to bear children. And here's Sarah, almost 90 years old, with no children. But I also think of that question that God asks when Adam and Eve sin and they hide themselves, and he asks, "Adam, where are you?" And I think all the time God is asking us where we are, and then wants us to ask, "Where is he?" I took a walk this morning, and as I was walking, I was just conversing with the Lord, and as Father, I said, "I just want to know you better. I just want to see you." And I said, my heart's cry is like that of Moses. "Father, show me your glory." And just this heart cry, if I could just see him better, I'd be more like him. I'd be more refined. I would just live more closely to him. And just there's this hunger to know him better. So in the middle of this question, where is your wife? There's another word, where is he? So that's a question I think we always need to be asking, where is God? And we all know the answer to it. He's always right here. He's always closer than your next breath. But unless we ask the question, we don't remind ourselves that he is so very, very close. You know, we all want a conversation like Abraham had with these messengers of God. What a day that must have been. But in many ways, we have just as intimate, just as real conversations with God. We'll really pause to seriously answer the question, where is he? And the answer is, he's right here. Well, we go a little bit further, and in chapter 19, verse 33, we have this horrible story, and it is a horrible one, but it's an important one nevertheless. And it's the story of Lot. Lot and his family have fled from Sodom, and of course Lot's wife didn't quite make it. She looked back. Though she was on her way out, her heart was still back there in Sodom. She looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. And so Lot is left alone with his 2 daughters, and they're living in a cave. He was too fearful to go to the place that the angel directed them. He says, oh, isn't this good enough? Let me just go here. And you know, half obedience is really disobedience. And so many times we want to compromise with God, and most of the time he lets us. If that's as far as you'll go, all right, but it never works out well. So here Lot and his 2 daughters are living in a cave. I'm sure Lot is depressed because he's lost his wife, he's lost his home. He's probably beaten himself up for ever having departed from Abraham to the east to go to Sodom and Gomorrah. And his 2 daughters, having been influenced, I'm sure, by the horrors of Sodom and by their father just that day offering them to the crowd to appease the crowd. You can read about it. They probably thought, well, that's the way he's going to treat us. There's just no standards. And so they figured, well, we'll never have husbands, but we do want to have children. And so they get their father drunk. And the first night, his oldest daughter lies with her father, and she gets pregnant. The next night, the other daughter lies with her father, with Lot, and gets pregnant. And it says, so they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she laid down or when she arose. That phrase, or when she arose, is one word. It's uvkuma. There you can see it, uvkuma. And you see, again, there's a dot over a letter in the Torah scroll. This may remind you of last week's Torah portion. If you recall, then it talks about Hagar, and Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham as a wife. And there's the word in there, and when she arose, I'm sorry, it's b'nei, it's uvnecha, between you, referring to this thing between Sarah and Hagar and Abraham. And there's a dot over the word there, which represents that one sperm cell that gave birth to Ishmael, who became the father of the Arabic nations. So likewise here, when she arose, when Lot's oldest daughter arose, there's a little dot. That little sperm became the father of the people of Moab, the same people who tried to get Balaam to go and curse the Israelites. Little things can contain great power, both for good or for evil. And as we go further into Genesis 21:6, when finally Sarah gives birth to Isaac, it says, and Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And the word for laughter is zachak. And so Isaac's name is Yitzchak, which means laughter, or he laughs, or he will laugh. Now, what's interesting about this word zachak, laughter, that I think is fascinating is this. It's spelled Zadi, Chet, Kof. And the numerical values of these letters are here. Zadi is equal to 90, Chet is 8, Kof is 100. Now, how old was Sarah when she gave birth? She was 90 years old. How old was Abraham? He was 100. And so what is this 8 in the middle? 8 is always the number of life, of new beginnings. This is why a little boy is circumcised on the 8th day of life and is given his name on that day. We read about the ark. There were 8 souls on the ark. And when we think of Messiah rising from the dead, we will say the first day of the week, but you can also say it's the 8th day of the week, because after the 7 days, you come to a new beginning. 8 starts a new cycle, a new beginning. So Isaac, this little child, this little boy, was given to his parents when they were 100 and mom was 90. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this causes laughter, because this just doesn't happen, does it? Now we go on to Genesis 22:2, and if you didn't hear anything else in this teaching, this is probably one of the most important things I can share with you, because there's so much confusion about why would God tell Abraham to take his only begotten son up to the top of the mountain and sacrifice him. And by the way, when it says here in Genesis 22:2, he said, take your son, your only son, it's only begotten, really, is what he's saying. And people will say, well, wait a minute, Abraham also fathered Ishmael. No, that's not true. Abram was the father of Ishmael. Abraham was the father of Isaac. So this is why God could say to Abraham, after he'd entered into a blood covenant with God, after he had had his name changed with a hey from God's name inserted into Abram's name, that we would say that Abraham's only begotten son was Isaac. Whom you love. And this is the first time the word love appears in Scripture. This is important. If you want to understand the essence of what love is, the first example that is given is the love for a father for his only begotten son. And of course, this verse should remind us of John 3:16, because I believe John 3:16 is meant to echo this verse, that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That phrase, only begotten son, is found only in one other place, and that's here in Genesis 22:2. And so Abraham giving his son to God because he's in a blood covenant with God, well, that's reflected by God giving his only begotten son to us because he is in a blood covenant with Abraham and thereby with us as we are grafted into Abraham. But let's get back on track here. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as an offering. Now that phrase is 3 words in Hebrew. Offer him there as an offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Now, this phrase is v'ha'alehu sham there la'olah. And you can see this word olah, ayin lamed he, in the first and the third words. There we have it, ayin lamed he. So offer him up there for an offering up. Now, we are often told, or we think, that God told Abraham to go and sacrifice his son. He didn't tell him to do that. Or to go and slaughter his son. Didn't tell him to do that. Or go make a burnt offering of his son. Didn't tell him to do that either. He said to make an olah of his son. And this is where Abraham might have been a little confused. Because generally, when we think of the word olah, we think of something going up because it's put on the altar, it's burned, and it goes up in smoke. Because the word olah means to go up. The Israeli Airlines, El Al, it comes from this same word as well, to go up. In fact, the very first place we find the word olah is in Genesis 2:6. And a mist went up. It doesn't say it went up in smoke. It doesn't say it was sacrificed or slaughtered or put on an altar. but it just went up from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. Now, with this in mind, we can begin to understand what the real test was. It was never in God's heart that Abraham should kill his son, sacrifice, slaughter, burn his son on an altar. But he allowed Abraham to think that is what he wanted. Because, again, generally the word olah is referring to an elevation offering. You hear that term, you read it in the scriptures. An elevation offering. Because it elevates, it goes up, because that's the essence of what the word olah means. I found in my own life, almost every test that comes my way is when God says something, and I think I know how that's going to turn out, and it is not going to turn out well. But then if I do walk in faith and follow through in what God said, I look back and realize I misinterpreted how things would turn out. Things turned out exactly as God said. He told me what to do, but the outcome is completely different from what I anticipated. Because he allowed me to think things would turn out a certain way, but they turned out perfectly instead. And that was the test for Abraham. He went for 3 days thinking, I've got to kill my son, set his body on fire, and watch it go up in smoke on an altar. God allowed him to think that. But when you look right at the essence of what God said, that is not what God said. See, here's the words that mean slaughter and sacrifice and so forth. We have shachat, which means to slaughter. But God did not tell Abraham to slaughter his son. Here's the word zavak. That's where we get the word mitzbeach, which is an altar. Zavak means to sacrifice. God did not tell Abraham to sacrifice his son. Here's the word korban, which is a burnt offering. And that's where we get our English word carbon, because when you burn something, what's left is just the black carbon. God didn't tell him to make him a korban, because these are very specific words that require death and burning. What God said is make him an olah. What is olah? Make him go up. So Abraham took him up the mountain. He tied him and put him up on the altar. But when Abraham went to actually slaughter his son, God stopped him. God didn't want Isaac's death. He wanted Abraham's heart fully and completely. And he had it. So whenever you read this story or think about this story, remember God never asked Abraham to sacrifice his son, slaughter his son, or make a burnt offering of his son. The word that is used is very specific. It's the word olah. Now, you can have an olah korban. And you find the word korban used quite often in Leviticus chapter 1, the chapter which discusses the whole burnt offering. And in Leviticus chapter 1, verse 3, it says, if his offering is an olah korban, an elevation burnt offering, then it goes on and gives instructions. So you can find olah and korban together, but olah simply means to go up. And of course, what's the best way to make something go up? Well, you catch it on fire and it goes up in smoke. So I hope this brings some clarity and maybe some relief. Because I know some people, they have a hard time thinking, well, God tells you to do this horrible thing and says, oh, I'm just kidding. No, God doesn't do that. God is true from beginning to end. God doesn't change his mind about such things. And he's not a monster. But he does test us. And he allows us to imagine the outcome of instructions he gives us, only to prove that the outcome is quite different. He doesn't lie, he doesn't deceive. But God, from the very beginning, I can imagine after this whole episode and Isaac is restored to Abraham kind of smacking his forehead and said, of course, he said to make an olah. I assumed it meant a burnt offering, but now I get it. God was being hyper literal, just saying, bring him up to me. And Abraham did. So I hope this is a blessing to you. Hopefully this will comfort your heart a little bit. I really don't like it when we have negative thoughts about God and begin to doubt his love and his righteousness and his goodness. So don't doubt him. He is absolutely good. He is Hatov, the good one, and that never changes. So, till next time, be blessed, and I wish you shalom.
Roger that.